Religious leaders, notably from the Catholic, the Anglican and Presbyterian churches, and also some leaders from SUPKEM, played a major role in pushing for constitutional reforms, which emboldened the civil societies and the opposition.
That was a major breakthrough, getting the religious sector to accept to work with us and then to give us its institutions, so that even we had access to churches, for, like the Catholics through their justice and peace. We would do a lot of work.
Apart from Limuru and their periodic countrywide civic education campaigns, the NCEC Movement landed the historical Fungamano House, where all pro-constitutional reform forces would hold at times weekly consultative meetings.
Fungamano House was very significant because it was a safe haven. It was not easy for the government to come and attack the institution of all the churches, and there was a meeting of Christians and Muslims and Hindus, all faiths really, to advocate for change. Also generously, we did not really pay for Fungamano, and even when Ombaka, when there was also the People's Constitutional Commission, that Ombaka and Mutava, again, Fungamano was a safe place. And I think it was the ingenuity of the creativity of the pro-democracy forces to see when the state is very violent, what forms of struggle do you adopt? What is easier to make you survive?
As anticipated, the climax of the NCEC-led protests would be bloody confrontations with anti-riot police. The defiant and resilient anti-government forces, calling themselves pro-democracy movement, always found themselves on the wrong side of the law, and it now emerges all was by design. Chaotic scenes that drew the anger of the international community that saw Kenyan government as an oppressive establishment.
The contention here was that every time we wanted to meet or to convene, the government wanted us to apply for permit. And our position was that is exactly what we want to change. So it will be a contradiction for NCC to go and ask for permit to hold their meetings, because we're asking for freedom of assembly for doing peaceful meetings. And so that's a period of confrontations, period of violence, intimidation, covert and overt intimidation, and a very traumatizing period for the people in the NCA leadership, other supporters, and also for their families.
KANU was almost collapsing. The government was almost collapsing, because I can remember an American ambassador coming to me as the chair of the National Convention Executive Council. They came to us and said, do you want to overthrow the government? Is it time now for the government to collapse? Because there was intense political mobilization. And we said, no, we don't want to overthrow the government by unconstitutional means, because we are advocating for a just constitution. We just want a constitution. And even there was a time we were supposed to meet KANU at Safari Park. They came to Safari Park, and they decided that they would rather isolate the political opposition. And they told the political opposition that these civil society people want to take over, and they will take over from you and us. Therefore, let's go to Parliament. Let's take some of the things that they have been agitating for, and we make IPPG, and the country does not burn. Many times when we would have the mass demonstrations, you would not sleep at home. We would tell people to sleep in other places so that we are not kind of captured. And like Orengo was very good at that, so that you will not know where Orengo is, and Muite. They were very good at that. There were times my children could not go to public schools because they would be told that your father is destroying the country by their peers who are from the senior officials, whose parents were senior officials within the government.
However, civil societies have always been accused of being puppets of foreign masters, and since 2002 December, when NAC took over the reins of power, the activities in the country went on a sharp decline. Are they guns for hire? And who really funds the activities?
So we've heard that song and it continues. It also continues even now, but just it's a different tune. Now, first of all, NCEC was not donor dependent. Organizations that were behind NCEC, from where we came, Clarion from Kibwana's side, Kenya Human Rights Commission from the other side, Mazingira from this side, and many. Okay? Now, these organizations brought their whatever resources they had in cash, but also in kind.
We have to start with reconstructing the civil society, which has suffered from about 10 years of very negative politics. People forget that Moi did not deal with the civil society in the way that Jubilee has dealt with the civil society. Jubilee has basically described civil society as the evil society, which it is not. Jubilee has clamped down the media. Jubilee has destroyed the political opposition. Jubilee has not stopped there. They have gone on to dismantle the church and the voices there. This began from the post-election violence of 2007, 2008.
In 2014, upon his return from the Hague-based International Criminal Court, President Uhuru Kenyatta expressed his anger on what he termed as questionable patriotism from a section of civil societies, and he did so without mincing his words.
Wale wa Kenya ambao wanaenda kule nje ati ndio wapatiwe mahela, alright? Wakiambia wazungu kule juu ya shida ya Kenya, wakuje hapa kwanza waingiane na wananchi wajue shida ya Kenya ni nini. Sio kwenda kule wanakuja wanahonga watu, wanachukua kwa sababu ya umaskini, ati wewe nenda ukaseme hii na hii na hii na hii na hii, wale watakupatia pesa. Na mmejionea. Na mnajua wengine wale ambao mimi naongea juu yao, ambao wametusumbua katika taifa hili letu la Kenya. Kila siku wakiamuka ni machafu wanaongea juu ya nchi yao.
It happened that the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and civil society organizations in governance and human rights were very actively involved in sharing information with the National Commission on Human Rights, and this information finally partly working with the ICC. In the campaign that followed was that civil society organizations are the ones that have taken Kenyans to the Hague, which was actually false, because if you remember, civil society in Kenya wanted a strike, special tribunal for Kenya. But politicians said, we don't want to be vague, we want to go to the Hague.
But unlike in the 90s, when Kenya witnessed the resurgence of vibrant civil societies, a lot has changed. Nowadays, they are hardly felt.
One thing that we didn't do right was to plan for succession, so that when we now started exiting into politics, I remember even when I went into politics in 2002, the civil society said I was a betrayer. I should have stayed in civil society and continued agitation there. But I said, now the constitution draft had gone to parliament, and I thought I was following it so that it could be finalized, but it took a long time. And also, civil society now has diversified. They are not just focusing on legal things or constitutional things. You have, civil society of health issues. You have civil society of volunteerism. You have civil society of things that ordinarily do not attract a lot of attention. And of course, after we got the constitution in 2010, people kind of relaxed. They said, we have this constitution. And even the donors themselves began to say that we will support the national government to implement the constitution. We will support county governments to implement devolution. So civil society started to be starved of funds. And because there hasn't been a culture of local support for civil society, so that some of the big names of civil society, some of the big organizations even to collapse, to kind of shut down. So I think for me now, there is a reawakening. Civil society has to be very supportive of devolution, because devolution is a big thing, and devolution is what really will change Kenya irretrievably.
Duncan Hemba, The Untold Story.